SAL Radio Army Football Huddle. We've got our group assembled to discuss the Army win over the University of Connecticut on Saturday, and this week's challenge, the arrival of the Miami from Ohio RedHawks, and from the Mid-America Conference, a very good team, Mid-America Conference champions 2 years ago, and an interesting coaching comparison with Army coach Jeff Monken. So let's welcome Richard Miller from our SAL Radio staff. How are you, Richard?
Very well, Ken.
And Jack McGurk from Pelham, also from our SAL Radio staff. Good to see you, Jack.
Good to see you too, Ken. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. And from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama, we've got Colonel Sam Houston from the class of '87. Colonel, how are you?
Great, Ken. 3-0 and still no love from the polls.
Yeah, I think this week could make a change in that. And from the West Point class of '92, former Army football player Steve Shalou calling in from New Jersey. Steve, how are you?
Living the dream. Living the dream.
Okay, well, it certainly was a kind of a dream game on Saturday with Army's win over the University of Connecticut, 52-21, 42-0 at the half. And a game that Army's offense dominated early, scoring on its first 6 possessions. Quarterback Christian Anderson had 2 touchdown runs early and then threw a touchdown pass in the game, and had the pass to Isaiah Alton in the first quarter to make it 14-0. And Tyrell Robinson ran 70 yards for a touchdown, and touchdowns by Jacoby Buchanan and Anthony Atkins, 2 fullbacks. And then basically the second team players played the second half of the game when UConn scored their 21 points. Let's start with Sam Houston. What was your impression of the game?
Great. First, I'd like to send shout out to the Sprint football team. They opened their season this past Friday at West Point down at Shea Stadium, and they handily defeated University of Pennsylvania to get off to a rip-roaring start. So congratulations to my old team, Sprint football, formerly 150s. Go 150s, beat Navy. Great game. Some interesting stats about the game. Another game in which Army had 6 different players score a touchdown. In the first half, 6 possessions, 6 touchdowns. I believe I saw a stat on the screen that said Army was the only team in FBS to have been able to accomplish that in one half this season so far. We had 80 different players see playing time through the course of the game. 397 yards rushing is the most that the team has accumulated this season. And quite frankly, if they had not taken the foot off the accelerator pedal, it probably would have been closer to about 700 yards rushing at the rate they were going. Pitch plays. It is so refreshing to see the pitch plays back. We were in double digits on the pitch plays, and we had the second play from scrimmage was a pitch that went for over 50 yards. Connecticut was stacking the box to prevent the B-back, and lo and behold, Army has so far this season, they have figured out how to get the slot backs back into the game. And Tyrell Robinson, he had a 70-yard touchdown run, which came on another play that I've been a big proponent of, and that was the slot back counter off tackle. That's the second game in a row in which the slot back counter to Tyrell Robinson has been run. He almost broke it big last week. He did this week. He was hardly even touched, if he was even touched at all.
I'm going to have to write that down. Coach Monken had to correct me in the post-game press conference when I said it was a pitch play. And he said that was an inside running play that they gave to Tyrell.
Absolutely. Anybody who says the slot backs can't run inside is mistaken about option football. They're deadly on the inside. And when you've got lightning speed like Tyrell Robinson, it's like shooting a cannon straight up the middle when you have the right blocking and misdirection to make it work. And it worked like a charm on that play. Some of the negative, very little. But my score, while incorrect, I did call it. Army is notorious throughout history. They rarely beat the spread when they're favored by that many points, and they failed to beat the spread again. 1 minute away, and they would have beat the spread, but it didn't happen. The touchdown return on the kickoff return for a touchdown, there were 10 plebes on the field. It doesn't excuse that the play went for a touchdown, but the point is that in the second half, Army emptied the bench. And so the second half, the entire second half was UConn starters versus Army's second, third, and fourth string. And so you've really got to give them a lot of credit for how hard they played. And they came inches short on a fourth down drive in the second half that probably would have led to yet another touchdown for Army. And so overall, great game. I don't have much of anything negative to say about it. It just was an absolutely dominating performance. Connecticut is not nearly as good as I even gave them credit for last week. And I hate to say that. I'm not digging on them. They're a program clearly in rebuilding mode, but their freshman quarterback, he looks like a real bright spot for them. And so down the road, and this is one of my little digs out to the All Academy Forum. Those of you who are digging on UConn as being one of Army's opponents, and you don't like that fact, just remember that college football is cyclic. And so Connecticut might be down right now, but what you got to see is the number of freshmen and sophomores they had on the field, what kind of talent they brought to the field. They had some big linemen on defense, and I think they'll be back. So you may rue the day that you said Connecticut's no good when we have to face them again and they're on the upward swing again and they're going to be real competition. So anyway, great game. On to Miami of Ohio, the RedHawks.
Yeah, I think UConn's got to, decide on their coaching situation with Randy Edsall leaving just 2 weeks ago and make that commitment to the program. I asked one of their broadcasters if they were looking to try to move the football program back into a conference. And he said, no, they like being an independent. They have a television contract for their home games, much like Army does. Maybe not as highly compensated, maybe as the CBS network deals Army has, but they feel like they can build off of where they're at. So, because they could be an opponent for Army, another independent school not far away, one where the fans can drive to the away games very easily. So we hope that they can get their program back competitive. Now, Steve Shalou, you've been waiting to offer your insight on the game. What were some of the positives that you saw in the big score that Army put up on offense?
Yeah, Ken, it was the thing that was going on that excited me the most. The number of reps that the offensive line got with players that are out. We still got Connor Bishop out. We've got a couple of players, a couple starters that are out. Their backups were in there, and there was some good continuity with that. We were able to get off the ball and do some really good things. Those reps were invaluable for the future of where we're going to be and what we're going to do, whether it be this year or next year. But those reps are valuable of game reps. And also, to Sam's point, getting the sophomores and freshmen out there and, cutting their teeth and getting their first college football reps on a beautiful sunny September day where we had a bunch of reunions and it was just a lot of electricity in the air. That starts setting a real good table, not only for the underclassmen, but also for the recruits that are there. We're putting points on the board. People are getting in that don't get in normally. And there's domination and there's an opportunity to play. So the earlier that a recruit gets to see themselves play, maybe the more apt that they'll come and play on our great team. So I'm excited about that. I was really excited about the reverse pivot counter with Robinson. That play it hit hard. It hit a penetrating defense that was trying to get the lanes outside, and we slashed them. And it was just phenomenal to see. That's a wrinkle that we haven't seen in a year or so that I really, really liked. I thought the intensity and just the pure smoothness at the which Anderson played and got the ball outside. I thought he pitched the ball early sometimes, but it didn't hurt us. He didn't eliminate the pitch key, but the pitch key wasn't there to be eliminated. And he just got the ball outside to the quote unquote better athletes. And anytime we're getting that ball outside, it's positive in my eyes, because we're taking that, the fullback wasn't as much of a factor as it always is. The quarterback wasn't as much of a factor as it always is. It was more slot back, and that's good news for us.
Yeah, you look at the leading slot, fullback for Army, Anthony Atkins got 10 carries, 58 yards, and Wilson Cato got time in. The converted linebacker got 35 yards on the day. But Jacoby Buchanan only needed to carry 3 times for 4 yards, but he did get the touchdown. And so Cade Barnard got 4 yards on the game, but it really was the slot backs, Tyrell Robinson, 84 yards and the touchdown, and Brandon Walters at 58 yards, and so on. Also, I think it's important, Jamel Jones got in, played most of the second half, and looked well, ran 2 drives. And then we saw Jabari Laws get in for the last series for a couple of plays. But Tyree Tyler did not play in this game. He was held out and for another week to heal the leg injury that he suffered in the Georgia State game. So, Richard, what was your impression of watching the game?
My impression of watching the game was clearly a dominating performance by the Army football team, taking advantage of finishing with even 504 total yards. That was a team that really racked the yards. It's the most against Hawaii, November the 30th of 2019, and at a season high, 6 different players scoring on touchdowns. My impression was different players scoring and really racking up the yards is really setting the tone, and even setting the foundation for how this team is really dominating in the early going, getting off to a couple of wins. They're good, even though the schedule, I think, more towards the middle and maybe towards the end of the year, as we all know, will get tough.
It's going to get tougher very soon for Army.
Oh yeah, it's going to get tougher very, very soon. Army's offense is clicking immediately out of the gate. That was a key against a team like Miami of Ohio. Couldn't let up, and I don't think they did let up. They did not let up.
Okay, you got it, Richard. You got it, Jack. What was your impression of the game?
Oh, it was a heck of a game for Army. Christian Anderson with a great touchdown pass, 39 yards. Terrell Robinson with that 70-yard touchdown run. And, when you're taking on a team that's really struggling or in rebuild mode, that's something you really want to take advantage of. And boy, did Army do that. 42-0 lead at halftime. Last time Army had a 42-0 lead at halftime during the regular season was October of 2011. It was a game against Fordham University. Ultimately, Army won that game 55-0. And they also
that was a blizzard game, Jack.
Yeah,
that was a game where it was snowing sideways.
And they also had that had that same score. Yeah, and also in the Armed Forces Bowl in 2018 against Houston, they were up 42 points. Ultimately, won that game 70-14. And also the history up at West Point. This is Jeff Monken's 52nd win as head coach of the Army football team. He's now third winningest coach in Army football history. He's just 6 wins away from tying Coach Charles Daly. So Coach Monken making some history at Michie Stadium.
Well, he is. He's moving up the ranks of success in Army football. And I just want to talk for a minute about you know, the offense had a big day on Saturday, but defense held its own. Malcolm Morrison had 4 tackles. So did Peyton Hampton. Spencer Jones, another strong game with 3 tackles and a tackle for loss. Markel Broughton, who I said hello to after the game, had an interception. And Cedric Cunningham, 3 tackles. And the big standout was the junior linebacker, turned lineman Nate Smith, who had 2 tackles for loss, a sack and a half according to the score sheet, and we had a chance to meet him in the post game. Steve, do you know Nate Smith at all? Can you tell us a little bit about him?
You know what? I don't know much about him. I was impressed with his play for sure. I haven't had to meet with him.
Yeah, no, we got a chance to meet him, a junior, and he's been going back and forth between linebacker and defensive end. Sam, what was your impression of the defense for Army Saturday?
Great. But before I address that, I want to thank Jack for bringing up the milestone that Coach Monken passed, because last week in our huddle, as we concluded, I got so wound up for praising Coach Monken, talking about how much I want him to decide that West Point is where he wants to be and the history that he wants to make is for West Point. And I got carried away, and I was talking about statues and fields named after Monken, and I compared him to Newt Rockne. Clearly a mistake on my part. I just want to make sure that everyone know that I meant Coach Earl Red Blake is what I meant. So we can find a little niche of Mikey Stadium that can be named after Coach Monken, and he can be right up there with the greatest of all time in Army history with Coach Earl Red Blake. So my mistake last week, just wanted to make that correction. As far as the defense, again, in the first half, caveat here. During the first half, Connecticut had several drop passes, and I want to point that out. That as good as the defensive play was in the first half, which was lights out practically every play, they still had a few busted coverages where it was a drop pass away from going for big yardage or even a touchdown on UConn's part. So let's keep that in mind, that let's not be overshadowed by the fact that the starting unit played as well as it did, and they really did. I'm concerned about Bonzu getting hurt. I really hope that his injury is not something that's going to keep him out long term. He is an absolute standout and has been for the past couple of seasons on that defensive line. And it was painful to see him down and out in the end zone, limping around like he was. So we do pray that Bonzu is good to go and he'll be back on the field of friendly strife. I'm going to tell you who my unsung hero is of the defense. Spencer Jones, this linebacker. This guy came into the Liberty Bowl last year as a plebe when Radigan couldn't suit up because of COVID. And I don't think anyone had ever even heard Spencer Jones's name until the Liberty Bowl. That guy is a silent warrior. I'm so thankful he's only a yearling on the team. And he is playing one of the toughest positions a defender can play. You take a pounding at middle linebacker, and you are the heart and soul of the interior of that defense. And the kid is just doing a great job. He's my unsung hero. Broughton, that kid, I didn't know about the hatchet that they have on the sideline, but we got to see it on TV when he was holding it after he had made an interception. And that looks like a seriously deadly weapon. So it plays hand in hand with the fact that we've got some deadly weapons put together that are working as a team very well under Nate Woody. And had they played the entire game, I think that it would be safe to say that UConn probably would not have scored the entire game. So they came out with a vengeance. I think they had a chip on their shoulder after the Western Kentucky fourth quarter a week ago, and they wanted to prove that the Western Kentucky fourth quarter was a fluke. But again, let's be cautious here. There were a few plays where UConn had an open man and the pass was dropped. And some of these times the pass was really nicely done by their freshman quarterback. So let's keep that in mind. There were a couple of lapses on the defense in the first half. Fortunately, we didn't pay a price for it. And so I'm loving the way the defense looks. I'm concerned about the injuries that are mounting up. Hope Bonzu is good. And that's my take.
Okay. And Jack McGurk, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Air Force Academy's game? Sam isn't revved up enough.
Okay, well, Air Force it was their first conference game, Mountain West Conference game of the season against Utah State, and it was their first loss. Air Force lost the game. It was 49-45 win for Utah State. Both teams actually had over 600 yards of offense. Air Force offense had 619 yards total offense, 437 rushing, which is interesting. If you look at the offensive yards of these two teams, it's sort of an inverse of each other. Air Force had 437 rushing yards, 182 passing yards. Utah was 448 passing yards, 180 rushing yards. But running backs Emmanuel Michel and Brad Roberts, both of Air Force, they both had over 100 plus yards rushing in this game, as Michel ran for a career high 133 yards, including 2 touchdowns at 51 and 55 yards, both in the third quarter. Brad Roberts, as I mentioned, he had over 100 yards rushing. It's the 4th time he's done that in 7 career games, which is pretty impressive. Quarterback Zeke Daniels had a new career high in passing, 182 yards, had a touchdown and an interception, and he also rushed for 95 yards on the ground on 13 carries, had a rushing touchdown in the game as well. Mika Davis led the Falcons in receiving, hauling in 4 of 6 passes for 110 yards and a touchdown. He also had a 5-yard rushing touchdown, and Air Force actually had a 45-24 lead with 10:37 left in the game after Zeke Daniels' rushing touchdown. But Utah came back and scored 2 touchdowns on a 72-yard pass and a 61-yard run unanswered to ultimately seal the win for them. Air Force is now 2-1, and they're going to host Florida Atlantic on Saturday.
Okay. Very good. And Richard, what were a couple of the other big game scores from last week that you were watching?
A couple of the other game scores that I was watching. Number 8, Cincinnati remains undefeated with a 38-24 victory over Indiana. Number 16, Coastal Carolina, a 28-25 victory over Buffalo. Coastal Carolina is 3-0 on the season. Same thing for Michigan State. Michigan State beats number 24, Miami, 38-17. Michigan State improves to 3-0 on the season. Number 3, Oklahoma also stays undefeated, beating Nebraska 23-16. Nebraska's at 500 at 2-2. Michigan, Jim Harbaugh's Michigan Wolverines are now 3-0, ranked number 25 in the country. A 63-10 win over Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois' second loss of the season. Number 7, Texas A&M Aggies are now 3-0 with a 34-0 shutout over New Mexico. New Mexico is 2-1 on the season. West Virginia and Virginia Tech are both now 2-1, thanks to West Virginia's 27-21 victory. Also, number 12, Notre Dame also improves to 3-0 against Purdue with a 27-13 victory. The Alabama Crimson Tide, they get by the Florida Gators 31-29. Florida's 2-1 while Alabama improves to 3-0. The number 6 Clemson Tigers, a 14-8 victory over Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's second loss of the season. They are 1-2. Clemson's second win of the season. The number 5 Iowa Hawkeyes improved to 3-0 with a 37 victory over Kent State. Kent State's second loss of the season. Iowa is undefeated. Number 9 Ohio State's second win of the year, a 41-20 victory over Tulsa. Tulsa is now 0-3 on the season. Arkansas, number 20 over Georgia Southern, 45-10. Arkansas is now 3-0, while Georgia Southern is 1-2. Now, number 2, the Georgia Bulldogs, 40-13 over South Carolina. South Carolina is 2-1, while Georgia improves to 3-0 on the season. Number 10, Penn State is 3-0 with a 28-20 victory over number 22 Auburn. Auburn is now 2-1 on the season. Number 4 Oregon stays undefeated, a 48-7 victory over Stony Brook. Number 21, the North Carolina Tar Heels, a 20-point victory over Virginia. Both teams 2-1. North Carolina 59, Virginia 39. Also, number 17 Ole Miss 61-21 over Tulane. Ole Miss is now 3-0 on the season. Same thing for number 23 BYU. BYU a 27-17 victory over number 19 Arizona State. BYU is now 3-0 on the season. Number 14 Iowa State is a 48-3 victory over UNLV. Iowa State is 2-1 on the season. UNLV is 0-3 on the season. And the other game of the day, Fresno State goes to 3-1 with a really close victory, 40-37 over number 13, the UCLA Bruins.
Over UCLA, the Bruins from the Pac-10. So that's interesting. Thank you, Richard. Some big wins by team. A big win by Alabama. We were watching in the parking lot with you, Steve Shalou, their win over Florida. Now let's go to the game at hand on Saturday. We remember so well the 2018 visit of the Miami, Ohio RedHawks, and a game that went to double overtime, and the game-saving tackle by Elijah Riley on a 2-point conversion by Miami that looked like Army had it stopped. They had the quarterback tackle, but he lateraled to his right, and the running back grabbed it, was running down over the 5-yard line, and out of nowhere, Elijah Riley from the opposite side of the field came over, made the play, and I've never heard the Corps Cadets make the sound that they did. And the rendition of Brave Old Army Team after that thrilling win. It's probably the loudest I've ever seen a game at Michie Stadium. Sam, do you remember that game?
Absolutely. It was a very exciting game, and Army in recent memory has a history of thrilling games against MAC teams, because they also had a very thrilling game against Eastern Michigan at Michie that came down to a 2-point conversion that was stopped on an absolutely miracle tackle that flipped the back completely over, forcing him to land with the ball facing the opposite direction from the goal line, just inside the field of play, which meant that he was down by contact there, like a millimeter short of the goal line, which would have made a 2-point conversion. So, yeah, it was a phenomenal game. I'm not going to, before I say any more, I'm not going to let the Air Force topic go, because I did want to make a quick comment about Air Force and their game the other night. The good for Air Force, Roberts and Michelle. Who is this guy? He flew under my radar until this game. Michelle reminds me of Carruthers and Nelson Smith from Navy. He looks like a little bowling ball that hits the line at full speed and never looks back. So, hey, Army, pay attention here. They've got another wrecking ball back there that's spelling Roberts, and he looks serious. So I know you're going to be ready, but do your homework on this guy, because he really caught my attention during the game. Now, something happened in the second half that is notoriously Air Force. I'm going to tell you what it was. Utah State got the ball first in the second half, and they drove down the field. And on the play that they scored a touchdown, the quarterback got leveled in the backfield by an Air Force defender on a play that even the announcers were saying that should have been roughing the passer, and they knocked him out of the game. And guess what? It didn't get called. So how many times the Air Force get away with this knocking the quarterback out on obvious roughing the passer or targeting plays that they don't get called for? It was only fitting that from that point forward, Air Force's defense got absolutely torched. And when I say torched, I mean torched, especially in the fourth quarter. It was like everyone was out of position. It was though Air Force was having their Western Kentucky moment. The only difference is that Utah State won. And I got news for you. Utah State is not as good as Western Kentucky. So it was a fitting way for Air Force to meet its demise, given what they did to Utah State's first string quarterback, because it was an ugly play. And when even the announcers are up there saying, where's the flag? That should have been roughing the passer. Why was it not called? You got to be scratching your head. Are the refs looking the other way when the zoomies are on the field? Because apparently they are on defense. But back to Miami. I tell you, Miami is they are a proud member of the MAC. They're like a MAC blue blood. They've got a long and distinguished history. I think Ben Roethlisberger came from Miami RedHawks, and they have a tradition of fielding good ball teams. So far this season, it hasn't necessarily been the case. They're 1-2. Their 2 losses were pretty handy. That they lost pretty handily to a couple of FBS teams. Their 1 win came against
Cincinnati. It was closer against Minnesota. They lost 31-26.
Okay. Well, their 1 win came against an FCS opponent. So that has
a very new entrant in Long Island University. I didn't even know they were still playing there.
Well, it leaves you guessing on which Miami team is going to show up this week. And let's not discount Miami based upon their record. They have a lot of pride. They've got a lot of great athletes. They always do. And they're always known for very good quarterback play, as Army found out during that thrilling double overtime game that we all had to sweat bullets over to the very end to know that Army was in fact going to emerge victorious in that game. So I expect Miami to show up ready to play. They've got a chip on their shoulder from that double overtime loss, even though it was a few seasons ago. That was the last time they played Army. They want revenge. Plus, they want to turn their season around. Nobody likes being 3 games into the season and being 1-2. Heck, ask Navy. They're 3 games into the season and they're 0-2, and the only reason they're 0-2 is because they had a bye this past weekend. So, look, man, it's going to be a tough game. And they're going to put up a lot more competition than UConn did. And again, no offense to UConn. I believe Miami of Ohio is a much better team. I believe they're a much better team than their record. I think the athletes that they bring on their team and the size they bring on the line of scrimmage are going to give Army a tough time. So Army needs to bring its A game. I doubt very seriously we're going to see 80 players empty the bench and get some playing time this weekend. I think it's going to be the starters, and they're going to have to play for 60 minutes to bring out the victory in this game.
I agree. I think it's going to be a very tough one for Army. We heard a little bit. Richard Miller forwarded the press conference that their head coach Chuck Martin held today. He is a former football teammate of Jeff Monken at Milken College in Decatur, Illinois, where he was a safety, and Coach Monken was laudatory about his teammate, what a good player he was, and what a great coaching career he's had. Coach Martin had a 48-game winning streak when he was head coach of Grand Valley State. Then he moved on to Notre Dame as the offensive coordinator with Brian Kelly, and then has been at Miami since 2014, just at the same time as Jeff Monken. I believe they started their head coaching careers there in in FBS the same time. And the last 5 years, he has been 25-9 with the team. And of course, was the 2019 Mid-America Conference champion. Steve Shalou, what do you see going into this Miami game? Their background, they represent, as Coach Munkin would say, you know, one of the really highly concentrated areas of high school football in the country, you know, in Southern Ohio. What's your thought about going into the game?
Yeah, I can appreciate it. For the longest time, the MAC was the bane of our existence, and I still have, PTSD on that whole situation going into this one. So I don't take it lightly. It's interesting to look at the depth chart, though. They are a very, very young team, especially at the point of attack. The defensive tackles are, one's redshirt freshman, one's a sophomore. They're in the 285 to 295 range, so they're not necessarily behemoths. They run an even front, so that's going to provide our guards some coverage, and we've got to make sure that we're getting at the point of attack there. But even their linebackers are light and young. The strength of the teams, the defensive backfield, the 2 out of the 3 leading tacklers are defensive backs. So, it's going to be interesting to see if we can establish, they may be running around in circles a little bit with the option attack because a lot of these guys being freshmen and sophomore haven't seen an option attack before. So how do they react to that? This is not a first game opponent. This is a third game opponent where they didn't have all summer to really prepare for us. So I think it's going to cause some problems with them, and they don't have experience to build upon to relax and stay settled. So I think we should have a good offensive day against that defensive front.
Anything on their 2 quarterbacks? They've got 2 sophomore quarterbacks, Brett Gabbard and AJ Mayer, who've kind of split duty so far. Any feedback on the quarterbacks?
Haven't looked deeply with them. Gabbard is actually a true freshman, I believe. But the MAC is generally a very, very pass-oriented conference. So I'm sure they're very well prepared. They've got some experience with juniors on wide receivers. And if we're not doing what we need to do coverage-wise, like Sam talked about, it could present some problems to us. But I think offensively we will control the line of scrimmage and control the time of possession again. I think defensively we just got to make sure that we're doing the right things on that, and I think we'll end up victorious for sure. Okay,
now Jack McGurk, what are the games for the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy this week?
Air Force is going to be at home against Florida Atlantic. And that could be an interesting game. Florida Atlantic's favored by 5 points in that game. So that's what we wanted to keep an eye on. And then
Florida, did you say Florida Atlantic's favored in that game?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the other one with Navy, they're taking on Houston. That's going to be a really tough game. Houston, overwhelming favorites in that game. They're 20-point favorites in that one. So, that should be it. Could be another rough game for Navy, but we'll have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, Houston, one of the better teams in the America Conference. One of the teams scheduled to move on to the Big 12, and so that's good. And they're trying to make the impression that they deserve to be in the Big 12. A number of those schools are. They're talking about Memphis trying to audition for a bigger conference, which means there's question marks about what the America Conference's future is, and where Navy will end up. I guess we'll see what happens. That's going to be a tough game for Navy, and they've been having a struggling season so far. But Sam, what do you think about Florida Atlantic being favored over the Air Force Academy?
Well, I think part of that is that people are looking at the way Air Force imploded defensively in the second half in the Utah State game as part of the reason for that. And Florida Atlantic actually is a little better than what people give them credit for. They've had a bit of a resurgence in the past couple of years. They've been able to seize upon some of that Florida talent and flesh out their ranks with some very talented ball players. So I think all things considered, and I don't know enough about what type of offense Florida Atlantic runs, but I believe that they do spread the field out a little bit like Utah State did. And if they pay close attention to the game film of what worked for Utah State, they may be able to seize upon a few glaring deficiencies that have been exposed in Air Force's defense. So we'll see. I don't think that they should be favored by that much. Air Force at home typically is a tough game, and for anybody, I don't care who they are. And I believe that Air Force is probably going to play out of the gate a little bit more intense coming off of their loss to Utah State to prove a point that it was a blip on their radar and not indicative of their season to come. So if Florida Atlantic comes ready to play and they play their A game for 60 minutes, I think that they do have a chance of knocking off Air Force and giving them their second loss. If not, they'll probably get worn down in the second half by some triple option football and end up finding themselves behind with no time on the clock to come back. So, but as for Navy and Houston, I think unless Houston just absolutely implodes in some shape, form, or fashion and turns the ball over constantly inside their own territory, I don't see any way that Navy can knock Houston off this weekend.
Jack, where is the Air Force Academy game against Florida Atlantic?
That's at the Air Force Academy at Falcon State.
Air Force, okay.
Yeah.
And Richard Miller waiting to tell us what are some of the other big games in college football this weekend.
Some of the other big games in college football this weekend, as we get to games for week 4. Some of the other big games, as I get it up here, UNLV is taking on number 22 Fresno State. That's a high noon kickoff. 12 p.m. also, number 12 Notre Dame will be taking on number 18 Wisconsin. Number 6 Penn State will be taking on Villanova. Number 2 Georgia will be taking on Vanderbilt. Number 17 Coastal Carolina is going to be taking on Massachusetts. That's a 1 o'clock game. 3:30 slate has number 9 Clemson taking on NC State. Also number 5 Iowa taking on Colorado State. Number 14 Iowa State taking on Baylor. 3:30 Rutgers is taking on number 19 Michigan. Texas A&M is going to be taking on number 16 Arkansas. That's a 3:30 game. 4 o'clock, the Georgia State will be taking on number 23 Auburn. Also, you have number 24 UCLA taking on Stanford. That's a 6 o'clock game. 7 o'clock, it's number 25 Kansas State taking on Oklahoma State. Nebraska is taking on number 20 Michigan State at 7 o'clock as well. Also at 7 o'clock, number 11 Florida is taking on Tennessee. That's a 7 o'clock game. 7:30 Ohio State will be taking on Argonne. That will be also at 7:30. Number 21 North Carolina will be taking on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. A 7:30 game. 7:30 games also tonight. On Saturday, Alabama will be taking on Southern Miss. 7:30. Number 4 Oklahoma will be taking on West Virginia. Also at 7:30. 10:15. Number 15 BYU taking on South Florida. Number 3 Oregon is taking on Arizona. That's a 10:30 game.
Very good, Richard. Now, one topic I'd like to bring out, I sent out an article on proposed changes to the NCAA. It was announced that the former Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, would be running a panel to recommend changes to the NCAA. NCAA has been receiving a lot of critique, and it's gone through a lot with the name, image, and likeness, and then the movement in the Power Five of especially with Texas and Oklahoma leaving to the Southeast Conference. So the former Secretary of Defense, who is a former president of Texas A&M University, is heading a panel to try to rewrite and, in his words, simplify the rules for the NCAA, where there is some consideration that the Power Five could even conceivably leave the NCAA. Steve or Sam, any thoughts on former Sec Def Robert Gates addressing the future of the NCAA?
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I get a little fired up when politicians start entering into sports and vice versa. Does it add credibility that he was the Secretary of Defense? I don't know if it does or not, right? So I think we just need to kind of let the dust settle a little bit before we try to figure out whether or not there's an issue or not. I mean, it's early. There is going to be. It's going to reverberate and it's going to find its natural center. And when you've got Texas and you have Oklahoma going to the SEC, that's going to play out in a way that it may not be advantageous that they did that. It may backfire. So, before we start jerking around, switching the channels and all the dials and the TV all at once, let's just kind of let this thing stabilize. I mean, football's never been more popular. I really, whether or not Marshall goes to the national championship, I don't think they ever thought they were going to, nor Army or anybody else. So unless you're in those Power Five. So I don't think college football is any less popular, and I don't think the games are any less exciting because of this new alignment. So let's let it play out.
Okay, Sam Houston, any thoughts about Robert Gates, who is the former president of Texas A&M University, looking to develop a proposal for the future of the NCAA?
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I'm not sure where him being former Secretary of Defense gives him street cred about being, head of the NCAA and working out ways to make the NCAA better for college football. I mean, how could you make college football better at this point? College football, that's football. And these are amateur athletes. That's what it's supposed to be. This is their chance to shine on the field of friendly strife. Each of the teams in FBS and FCS and Division III, these kids know the school that they became a part of and the program that they're representing. They had their expectations. And I agree totally with Steve. I don't think a kid who goes to Army came to Army thinking that, Army is going to be a national championship team. But why would you pull the Power Five out of the NCAA? I mean, why don't we just make the Power Five pro football? I mean, what is the point? I don't get it. So the Power Five is the Power Five. They represent the Elite Five conferences of FBS football. They're typically the conferences that bring to the table at the end of the season the teams which will compete in the BCS championship playoffs and ultimately the BCS championship. Every now and then you may have an outlier team. So I would think that if they were looking at improving the NCAA, they would look at ways to make those outlier teams have a better opportunity, more equity on the playing field to be able to possibly bring in that outlier team every now and then into the BCS championship game, not pulling out the Power Five and totally eliminating the possibility of the Power Five ever being upset by somebody like Army or anybody else. So yeah, I don't bring much optimism to this whole conversation, because in my opinion, I believe it's all fueled by money, and it's all fueled by giving the Power Five even more, more scratch that they can become even bigger and better with, while the remainder of the teams in FBS football are left behind. And everybody just, and what they think and what they're assuming is that people who are watching college football games only want to watch the Power Five conference teams, which also is not true. So we'll see what happens. Let the dust settle, like Steve said. Let's see what this is becoming with these teams shifting conferences. Let that settle first and see where we stand. And then if it ain't right, then maybe we can look at some other changes to FBS football. But again, I think that if any change would be needed, it would be to maybe draw back some of the power of the Power Five conferences, so that some of the outlier teams do have a better chance of being able to every now and then upset the apple cart and be a contender.
Yeah, well, I think that's the critical issue, is the consolidation of television revenue in the Power Five. And I remember talking to Buc Oregon about the difference in television revenue, the America Conference versus, the SEC or the ACC, being a difference of, $25 to $30 million a year. And I think that's one of the issues they're going to look at. The Knight Commission also came out with a statement recently about trying to keep the top five conferences in, because it affects all the other sports, especially basketball. Trying to keep the NCAA basketball tournament, the great 64 or 68 team event that it is, that it would be different if it was split into a Power Five version and one for everybody else. So we'll see. Okay, well, let's go into our lightning round on the score for Army versus Miami, Ohio. And let's start with Richard. What do you say on the game at Michie Stadium, 12 noon on Saturday?
The game on Michie Stadium on Saturday, I think it's going to be another one of those close games. Can't take it easy. No, wait. I think it's going to be maybe at least a nice win for Army. I think it's going to be 34-31.
34-31. Okay, high score and close game. Okay, Jack McGurk, what do you say?
Yeah, I like Army in this game. Looking at Army's 8-point favorites in this one, and Miami, Ohio, they're going to put up a heck of a fight, more of a fight than UConn. But is their defense going to be ready for the Army triple option offense? So I like Army in this one. I'm going to say 35-24.
Okay, 11-point victory by Army. And let's go to Sam Houston. What do you say on the what's your prediction for Saturday?
Sure. Yeah. First thing, before I make my prediction, I'm talking to you, Army football fans. I'm pointing my finger at you.
Oh boy.
You live within a 6-hour radius of Michie Stadium, and you're not going to the games. 25,000 people at the stadium this past week. Hey, do you guys forget the dark ages? Is it that far gone that you don't remember how bad Army football was, that now you're complacent and you don't want to just get out of your easy chair because you can watch the game on TV on CBS Sports Network? Wouldn't you rather go to the stadium and watch? Hey, the only reason I'm not at the stadium every week is because I live in Huntsville, Alabama. It's a little logistically difficult for me to get up to Michie to watch the home games. But by golly, every time Army plays within an earshot of where I live, I'm there. I am there. So where are you guys? Where is the passion? Haven't you been wanting Army to have a winning, successful program forever? And now we're in the middle of it, and you guys aren't going to the games? Come on, man. Come on. And by the way, this game this Saturday is going to be a great one. And you live near Michie and you don't go, you're going to miss it. Because here's what's going to happen. It's going to be close in the first half, because Miami's going to show up with a chip on their shoulder. And Army's going to get knocked I think Miami's going to come out and knock Army in the teeth a few times. But by the end of the day, Army's going to pick up and they're going to dust themselves off, and they're going to show Miami what Army football is all about in the second half, and they're going to give them a good, healthy dose of some stingy defense and triple option football. And at the end of the day, the final score is going to be Army 35, Miami of Ohio 17.
35-17 for Sam Houston, and a great talk about encouraging fans to come out. It's going to be a great college game day at West Point this week. This is going to be a very competitive game. Now, Steve Shalou, how do you see it going?
Well, I actually go to the game, so I'm on Sam's nice list, not the naughty list, and I go to tailgate around 7:40 a.m. So you can all show up at 8. So I'm not behind you in line trying to get on post. So, but to Sam's point, yes, get out to the ball games. It's as beautiful as ever. The energy is there. Army comes out 31. They score. Army scores 31. Miami of Ohio scores 15. I think we have I think Georgia State is a better ball club than Miami of Ohio. That's my opinion of what I've seen. So that's my thoughts on this. I think Army will continue to roll, and there are they're going to look good this weekend for sure. Okay. And by the way, I'm going to make this prediction. Navy beats Houston this weekend. He had a week off. Coach Ncaa Lolo has. I have not given up on him yet. I think he rallies the troops with the bye week. And he always seems to find a way after the BYU game of last year for them to right the ship, if you're going to use that term. They will either get very, very close, or they'll at least cover this game, but they will. I think they're going to beat Houston. Throwing it out there. Okay,
very good. Well, I think it's going to be a great game. I thought the last visit of Miami to Michie Stadium was an exciting game and atmosphere. I was just looking at some of the video today. The stands were packed. The sound was amazing. And when Elijah Riley made that tackle to seal the victory, I've never heard the Corps of Cadets that loud, or the rendition of Brave Old Army Team before the alma mater, sung with so much voice and enthusiasm. And it was really a magic moment. And I think there's personal competition between these two coaches. They were college football teammates, Chuck Martin and Coach Jeff Monken at Millikan College in Decatur, Illinois. And I think that's it. When Coach Monken goes up against one of his former coaching colleagues or a former player, I think it's a special a competition for them. Miami of Ohio, they lost badly to Cincinnati. They gave Minnesota a good game, and then they beat Long Island University very badly last week, as we probably would expect. But I think a win like that can really kind of right a team. When you win, you have a confidence-building win like that. So we're going to see them come in, and I think it's going to be competitive, but I think Army's going to score a lot of points. They may give up a few. I'm going to sign up for 38-21. I think they're going to get a field goal. I think it was very helpful that Quinn Moretsky got a chance to kick a field goal late last week because somewhere along the line they may need a field goal to win a game. And I think that's one of the areas they've needed to improve, really, ever since the Oklahoma game. I wish they had gotten that field goal chance at the end. And so I think that was another valuable part of the win last week. So anybody have a final thought?
Come out to Mikey. Come out to Mikey. Pack the stands. Pack the stands.
Really,
Army will be ready.
Yeah, I echo that point from Sam. That people just may not be in the habit of going to games. People have to find their way to West Point, but just look it up. The website's got plenty of information on how to get in, the requirements to get in. I believe you just have to show an ID card. Is that correct? You just have to show an ID card, a driver's license to get in?
That's correct. Yeah.
So just check the website for instructions, and they'll tell you how to get parking. When you buy tickets, you can, they'll give you all the instructions on getting in. And we do recommend you get there early, before 10 o'clock, so that you can get parked and enjoy a tailgate, perhaps take the bus up or whatever, walk up to the stadium and enjoy the great pregame atmosphere in the Black Knight Alley right behind the East Stands. There's a lot of activity, fun. The West Point Benny Havens band was performing last week, did a great job entertaining the fans. And then, of course, the West Point band leads the day when they go out on the field and do the cheer of the corps, and then play Brave Old Army team as they go out onto the field to start the day. And of course, usually, if the weather's permitting, they have a parachute demonstration. Actually, had two last week. They had one before the game and one at halftime. So it's a great game day atmosphere and great for every college football fan to experience.
Yeah, and Ken, don't forget to mention that where else can you go to see a parade before the game? So go to the plane, and you'll see at least two regiments of the Corps put on a nice show for you of marching precision and manual of arms. And you know, if you've never witnessed this, if you've never been a part of that, you'll be hooked. I mean, it ain't that fun for the cadets to do it, but it is. They do show a lot of pride in being able to demonstrate their prowess on the plane for those who are in attendance and watching. And it's part of the pregame that you experience that you don't get on other college campuses. Plus, the beauty of the Hudson Valley and Miami Stadium is the most beautifully situated stadium in college football, especially now. The leaves are going to start changing, the colors of the Hudson Valley, everything about it is the greatest game day experience that you can have in college football. And it's at your fingertips if you live nearby. So call a ticket office, get your tickets, and get out there.
Okay, well said, Sam. 9 o'clock is the normal start for the cadet parade. They call it a review, and very, very impressive. Great to get, if you get out there early and go over there, you can take a bus from the parking lot or walk over to the plane, the famous parade grounds at West Point. Okay, we'll say goodnight to everybody. Richard Miller, thank you for your help and great job on locating that press conference from Miami today. That was very helpful. And
Thank
Jack,
you.
You're welcome. And Jack McGurk, thank you for your updates on the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy.
Thank you.
And Steve Shalou from New Jersey, thank you for your insight shared tonight. And we will see you up at West Point on Saturday.
We'll always be there.
Okay, and Sam Houston, class of '87 from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you for sharing your enthusiasm and insight in today's show.
Fired up. It's always an honor to be here, beat the RedHawks. And for those of you that I berated about being at Miami, I'll be at Miami for the Wake Forest game, courtesy of Steve Shalou, and I'm looking forward to it. Hope to see you there.
Okay, very good. And again, this is Ken Kreitzer. I always give a shout out to those we represent in the Sons of the American Legion, the 2 million veterans of the American Legion. And if you'd like information on the many services provided to veterans, healthcare, education, career transition, just go to legion.org, and there's plenty of information on assistance to veterans on the website. And also shout out to my colleagues, the 330,000 members of the Sons of the American Legion serving America's veterans. So good night to our team, and we'll look forward to seeing you at Miami Stadium or watch on the CBS Sports Network 12 o'clock on Saturday. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.